All right, hello and welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to look at Chapter 3, Section 2.2 from our textbook. So in today's lesson, we're going to kind of take a bit of a deep dive into a Native American named Squanto. I really like this section because a lot of the time we don't necessarily get to talk about some of the non-European individuals who helped settle early America. And Squanto was an indispensable part of early American colonists being able to survive in Plymouth. So specifically, he helped with the Pilgrims. So Squanto was originally from the Pawtuxet tribe. The Pilgrims definitely wouldn't have guessed that a fluent English-speaking Native American would be able to act as their interpreter and their guide. So Squanto, whose Native American name was Tisquantum, must have been like a godsend for these early early colonists. He taught the Pilgrims how to grow maize, which, if you remember, is kind of like corn. Um, he showed them where to catch fish, and he generally showed them the rope so that they were able to survive in Plymouth. He even died in the Pilgrim service. What we don't know for sure is what came before he helped the early Pilgrim colonists. So most of what we know or think we know about Squanto comes from eyewitnesses, secondhand eyewitnesses, and it is probably at least somewhat unreliable. So what I've kind of presented here is what the general consensus is, but it is also, again, it's important to note that this may not be the complete truth. According to some sources, he was kidnapped from his Massachusetts home in 1605 by Englishman George Weymouth and taken to England. While there, he was apparently treated well and taught English. However, I will put a note in here that treated well is very subjective, and chances are he probably wasn't treated as well as they thought he was treated. But the idea was that he would serve as an interpreter for the people settling the colonies. John Smith, who was one of the founders of Jamestown Colony, is said to have returned him to America for that purpose around 1615. So, interestingly enough, Squanto was actually kidnapped a second time, and this is one of the events that most authorities agree did happen at this time. One of John Smith's men, named Thomas Hunt, took Squanto and several other Native Americans to Spain, where the Englishman's goal was to sell them into slavery. Fortunately, Squanto was able to escape. Some say that Spanish priests end up rescuing him. Most accounts, though, have him escaping to England and befriending some merchants in London. This period then may have been when he learned English and kind of perfected his English speaking. In 1619, he then sailed with the merchants to New England to help them establish trade with the Native Americans. So if you remember earlier, I said that Squanto was originally from the Pawtuxet tribe of Native Americans. However, you may have heard that he is more closely associated with a group called the Wampanoag. This is because when Squanto returned home, he discovered that most of the Pawtuxet that he had lived with were wiped out by disease. So then he went to live with the Wampanoag tribe. In early 1621, a Native American named Samoset brought Squanto to Plymouth Colony. Samoset had been the first Native American to greet the Pilgrims, but he did not speak English very well. He had very limited English knowledge. So he really wasn't able to speak with them. Even though he greeted them, he couldn't really speak with them. But he knew that Squanto was able to speak good English, so he was asked to be their interpreter. So it didn't take too long before Squanto became an indispensable part of the community. He taught the settlers how to plant local crops, and he also served as their ambassador on trading expeditions. He even helped to negotiate a peace treaty between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag chief, Massasoit. In the fall of 1621, the Wampanoag, the Pilgrims, and Squanto celebrated the peace and Plymouth's successful harvest with the first Thanksgiving. So that's kind of where we get that from. Squanto's time in Plymouth turned out to be pretty brief, though. While guiding William Bradford on an expedition around Cape Cod, the Native American contracted a fever and died. According to some sources, Squanto had said something to the effect of, "Pray for me, Governor, that I may go to the Englishman's God in heaven," as he was on his deathbed. So, if this was true, Pilgrims had a pretty big, and Englishmen had a pretty big influence on Squanto. Honestly, that's one of those pieces that we really have no way to confirm if it's true or not. Um, but even if that isn't true, we do know that Squanto had a big impact on the people that he helped. So, kind of as I was saying earlier, a wrap up for this lesson thing I want you to remember from the section is that the early pilgrims probably would not have survived without Squanto's help. And although some may not talk as much about him, he was really the reason that early pilgrims were able to survive in Plymouth Colony. Thank you guys for listening. Go ahead and check back in Canvas to see what your next job is. Bye.